The courtroom went quiet after he said it. She can't even afford lunch for her kid. She's not fit to be a mother. That line didn't just land in the air, it hit me in the chest. And the worst part? He looked right at me when he said it, like he wanted to see it land, like humiliating me was part of the strategy. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I kept my eyes on the judge, even though I could feel my son's gaze burning into the back of my head. Ethan was right behind me, small and silent on the bench, watching the adults in the room argue about where he belonged. Marcus, my ex, sat there like the perfect father in a tailored suit, hands folded, face calm. But I knew better. I knew the truth hiding behind his rehearsed concern and polished image. And now he had a lawyer, Bradley Vicks, a man who spoke like every sentence was a closing argument, sharp and rehearsed, designed to draw blood. He deserves stability, the lawyer added, structure, not scavenged meals and secondhand shoes. I was still silent, but my jaw clenched so tight it ached. They made me sound like a stray dog picking scraps off the sidewalk, not a mother who worked 2 jobs and went to bed hungry, more nights than I could count. So her kid never had to. I don't know what I expected to happen next. Maybe nothing. Maybe I thought the court would take it at face value, that the words would hang in the air like truth just because they were said confidently. But then Ethan stood up. Not loud, not dramatic. He didn't look at me. He didn't cry. He just reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded, crumpled letter. He stepped forward and said clearly, "Your Honor, my dad left this in my toy box last week. I think you should read it." Every head turned. Even Marcus looked confused for a second, like he couldn't remember what he might have left behind. I looked at my son, the boy they said I couldn't care for, and I felt something shift. The fear didn't vanish, but it moved. Something stronger took its place, because when a child chooses truth over silence, over fear, over loyalty to someone who doesn't deserve it, that means something. That letter changed everything. But this moment, this exact moment, is when the story really began. And to understand what brought us here, you need to know what I've been through, what I've survived, what I've sacrificed. Let me take you back. I didn't start out strong. I became strong because I had no other choice. When I left Marcus, I didn't leave with confidence. I left with fear in my chest and a diaper bag over my shoulder. Ethan was only 4, still clinging to me every night, not understanding why we couldn't go back to the house with the big TV and the yard he used to run in. I didn't tell him that yard had become a cage, that the man who used to tuck him in could also freeze me out for days if dinner wasn't perfect or the living room wasn't clean enough. I didn't leave because I stopped loving who I thought Marcus was. I left because staying meant losing pieces of myself that I could never get back. For a while, we slept on the pull-out couch at my mom's. It was cramped, it was noisy, and it was safe. She didn't ask for much, but she reminded me often that I'd made this mess and needed to figure out how to clean it up. That kind of help stings, but it's still help. I took it. I started working nights cleaning offices, then mornings stocking shelves at a discount store. I walked Ethan to daycare, came home, changed my clothes, and went to job interviews in cheap shoes that blistered my heels. Every day was a grind. Every dollar counted. I tracked everything on a notepad: groceries, gas, bus fare. If I came up 20 short, something didn't get paid. But Ethan never knew that part. He never saw the nights I sat on the bathroom floor with the door shut, trying to figure out what else I could sell or cancel. He only saw the packed lunches, the bedtime stories, the hugs at drop-off. I made sure of it. Eventually, we moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The floors creaked, and the plumbing moaned like it was alive, but it was ours. Ethan picked the room with the window facing the alley. He taped drawings to the wall and called it his fort. I remember the first night there, lying on a mattress on the floor, holding him as he whispered, "I like it here. It feels quiet." That broke me a little. He was 5, and all he wanted was quiet. I took online classes during his naps and after bedtime. I decided I was going to be more than what Marcus said I'd be. He used to tell me I'd never survive without him, that I was too soft, too slow, too dependent. The truth was, I didn't even know I was capable until I had to be. I got used to exhaustion. I got good at solving problems without money. I became someone new. Ethan gave me reasons every day. He notices everything, even when I wish he wouldn't. When my coat got soaked in the rain and I didn't have a spare, he gave me his hoodie and said I could borrow it until I got bigger. When I missed the parent-volunteer meeting at school because my shift ran late, he told his teacher I was saving lives. He didn't know I was sweeping break rooms and taking out garbage bags twice my size, but I let him believe it. We built a world together, small, messy, but full of love. I made mistakes. I wasn't always patient. Sometimes I snapped when I was too tired to think. But Ethan never held it against me. He always reached for my hand. He always forgave me faster than I forgave myself. That's why Marcus's return hit so hard. After disappearing from our lives for nearly a year, he showed up again, polished, smiling, acting like he had always been there. He started picking Ethan up on weekends, then asking for more time, then casually mentioned custody. I thought he was bluffing. Until the letter came. He had filed for full custody, claimed I was unstable, unfit, unreliable. He listed everything I didn't have. No full-time income, no car, no college degree. He left out everything I did have: a safe home, a child who was thriving, a bond money can't fake. I couldn't believe it. I stared at the legal envelope, hands shaking, reading every line twice. Then I put it down, walked into Ethan's room, and watched him sleep. I sat on the edge of his bed and made a promise to myself. I would fight, not with hate, not with fear, but with truth, because no one gets to rewrite our story. I thought Marcus was bluffing when he said he wanted full custody. It felt like something he said to get a reaction, to see if he still had control over me. For most of our marriage, that was his power, making threats he never had to follow through on. But this time, he wasn't bluffing. He had a lawyer, a plan, and a version of reality I barely recognized. When I read through the court filing, it was like reading about someone else. According to Marcus, I was unstable, emotionally erratic, incapable of providing a safe and secure environment. He included photos of our apartment taken during one of Ethan's visits, making sure to capture the unwashed dishes in the sink and a pile of laundry in the corner. He made it look like squalor, not like a home lived in by a working mom and her growing son. He claimed I was financially irresponsible because I didn't own a car. He said I was socially isolated, that I lacked support. He even included quotes from Ethan's teacher, pulled completely out of context, suggesting my son sometimes seemed tired or distracted at school. I sat at the kitchen table with those papers and felt like the ground beneath me had opened. Everything I had worked for, everything I had clawed together from nothing, was being twisted into a weapon against me. I contacted legal aid and they assigned me a public defender named Carla. She was kind and honest. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She told me Marcus's attorney had a reputation for being aggressive and persuasive. I asked her what our chances were, and she paused before answering. That pause said more than anything else. The court hearings began 2 weeks later. The first one felt like a gut punch. Marcus arrived looking like the picture of responsibility. Fresh haircut, new suit. His girlfriend sat beside him in a cream blouse, holding a leather notebook like she was his assistant. I didn't have a suit. I wore my nicest blouse, the one I used to wear to job interviews, and black flats that pinched at the sides. Carla advised me to stay calm, answer simply, and not get emotional. That first day, I barely spoke. Marcus's lawyer did most of the talking. He painted me as someone overwhelmed, scraping by and emotionally unstable. He spoke confidently, like he knew the judge already agreed. I kept my head up and my hands in my lap, but my heart was racing. I kept glancing back at Ethan, who was sitting quietly with my mom behind me. He looked so small on that wooden bench, but he didn't fidget. He just watched. At home, I tried to act normal. I didn't want Ethan to feel the weight of what was happening, but he wasn't oblivious. He noticed my silences. He noticed when I stood too long staring at the sink. One night, he asked me if he had done something wrong. "No, baby," I said, kneeling in front of him. "You are perfect. None of this is your fault." He nodded and hugged me hard, but I could tell he didn't feel reassured. That's the thing about kids. They don't need to hear every detail to understand when something is wrong. They feel it. And he was feeling everything I couldn't say. By the second hearing, Marcus was pushing harder. He argued that Ethan had a better chance at a stable future with him. He pointed to his income, his house in the suburbs, his ability to provide extracurriculars and private school if necessary. I had no way to counter those claims. What could I offer? A rented apartment and a public school with overworked teachers and limited supplies? I couldn't argue numbers, but I knew the truth. I knew who helped Ethan with his homework every night, who read to him, who held his hand when he had nightmares. I knew who showed up to every parent-teacher meeting, even when it meant leaving work early and losing part of my paycheck. The judge listened quietly through all of it. She didn't give much away, and that scared me. I needed her to see beyond Marcus's polished image. I needed her to see the bond between me and my son. But how do you prove love in a courtroom? How do you measure stability when it's built from grit, not money? Then something changed. Ethan started writing. I didn't ask him to. I found his notebook one night while putting away laundry. He had written pages about his weekends with Marcus, how his dad was always on the phone, how the new girlfriend made him feel like he was in the way, how sometimes he wished he could just go home early. I sat on the edge of my bed holding that notebook like it was a life raft. He wasn't trying to take sides. He was just being honest. I didn't know it yet, but Ethan had already made a choice. And when the moment came, he wouldn't stay silent. There's a moment in every battle when you realize you're outmatched on paper. Marcus had the money, the legal team, the performance. He walked into court with confidence. I walked in praying the judge would see something more than what his lawyer wanted her to see. By the third hearing, it was clear their strategy wasn't just to argue for custody, it was to dismantle me piece by piece. They brought in a financial advisor to testify about the unstable nature of part-time income. They listed off every job I'd ever had since the divorce, each one temporary or part-time, each one framed as failure instead of survival. They showed a photo of our kitchen with dishes in the sink, a chair with a missing leg, a cracked light switch cover. They made our home sound like a danger zone, not a place where love lived. I didn't have dramatic evidence to counter them. I had no hidden camera footage or secret text messages. I had no witnesses to testify about the nights I stayed up with Ethan when he had asthma attacks, or the mornings we danced in the kitchen while I made pancakes from scratch with whatever was left in the pantry. I had Ethan, and I had the truth. That was all. I didn't know he was paying such close attention. I thought I had protected him from most of it, kept the stress hidden behind my tired smiles and late-night studying. But kids always know. They read between the lines even when you think you've written none. One evening, a week before the final hearing, I found Ethan at the kitchen table with a sheet of paper and his pencil set spread out beside him. He had written a list titled, "Things I Love About Being Home." The first thing on the list was, "Mom lets me talk about my feelings." The second was, "She makes food that smells like hugs." There were 14 items in total. None of them cost money. Every single one was about presence, consistency, and warmth. I asked him what the list was for. He looked at me and said, "I don't want to forget if I have to tell somebody." Then he folded it up and tucked it into his backpack. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed holding one of Ethan's drawings. It was a picture of us sitting on the couch reading a book, a stack of empty dishes on the coffee table, the dog-eared book I'd read to him at least 50 times. I realized then that I couldn't fight Marcus with his tactics. I had to stop defending what I didn't have and start standing firmly in what I did. Carla, my lawyer, asked if I wanted to testify in the final hearing. I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to get up there and tell the judge what kind of father Marcus had really been, all the ways he had manipulated me, abandoned us, treated Ethan like an accessory. But I also knew what it would look like. An angry ex, bitter and emotional, trying to tear down the man in the suit. So I told her no. I said I wanted to let my record speak. My attendance at every parent-teacher conference, the health reports, the consistency of Ethan's school routine, the counselor's note describing Ethan as grounded and emotionally healthy. I decided I wasn't going to make this about Marcus. I was going to make it about Ethan. I wrote a short statement to give to the judge. It wasn't long or dramatic. I told her that my son was growing up in a home where he was seen, heard, and safe. I admitted I was not wealthy, not perfect, and not able to give him every material thing. But I also told her what I could give: stability, love, time, honesty, and a life free of fear. I handed the letter to Carla and told her it was the only thing I needed the court to hear from me. I still didn't expect anything to change. I thought we would walk into that last hearing and they would win. Money talks louder than character, most days. But I also knew I had stayed honest. I hadn't lied, exaggerated, or played dirty. And I hadn't put Ethan in the middle, no matter how easy it would have been. But Ethan was watching. He saw everything. And what I didn't realize yet was that my silence had shown him something. That love doesn't always shout to be heard. That sometimes strength looks like sitting still while the world tries to bend you. And that sometimes the person you protect the most turns out to be the one who steps forward when it matters most. The courtroom was packed for the final hearing. It felt like the kind of silence that holds its breath, like everyone could sense something was about to shift. Marcus arrived with his lawyer, pressed and polished as ever. His girlfriend came again, too, sitting beside him like they were there to close on a house, not decide a child's future. Carla sat beside me, calm and prepared. I had my statement tucked in my bag, but we had already decided we wouldn't use it unless asked. We had submitted everything: school records, letters from teachers, Ethan's counselor's notes, even attendance reports. I didn't expect it to matter. The judge entered. Honorable Marie Kensington, stern face, sharp eyes. She had listened carefully throughout every hearing. We didn't give much away, and today was no different. Marcus's lawyer was the first to speak. He stood and launched into a confident summary of why Ethan needed a more structured, financially stable life. He mentioned extracurriculars, private school options, family vacations, opportunities that no child should be denied. He gestured toward Marcus as he spoke, like Marcus was some shining example of fatherhood. When he reached the end of his argument, he turned toward me just briefly and said, "We simply believe it is in the child's best interest to be with the parent who can truly provide." The word provide hit like a slap. I had spent the last 4 years providing everything that mattered, even if it didn't come with receipts. The judge turned to Carla and asked if we had anything to add. Carla stood, shook her head, and said, "Nothing further, Your Honor. Our case rests on the submitted evidence and the court's discretion." That was it. No speeches, no last-minute appeals, just truth on paper and a lifetime of showing up. I felt the tension crawl up my spine. This was it. Then something happened that wasn't planned. Ethan stood up. He was sitting beside my mother in the back row. He didn't look at me. He didn't hesitate. He stepped into the aisle, reached into his jacket pocket, and walked forward holding a piece of folded paper in both hands. The room froze. Even the judge looked up. "Excuse me," Ethan said. "I know I'm not supposed to talk, but I think the judge should read this." The clerk looked to the judge. She gave a small nod. Ethan stepped forward, handed her the paper, and walked back to his seat without saying another word. He sat down, eyes straight ahead, calm as if he had just handed over a homework assignment. The judge unfolded the letter. The room was silent, hanging on her reaction. She read it. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she looked at Marcus. "Mr. Lang," she said, her voice level, "are you aware of this letter?" Marcus looked confused. His lawyer leaned over to read the first few lines. The judge raised the letter and read it aloud. It was a note Marcus had written to a friend. Ethan must have found it and kept it. It was careless and cruel. Marcus had written that he wasn't actually worried about the kid, but wanted to rattle her enough to get her to fold. He wrote that it was about sending a message and proving she couldn't win. Judges always side with the parent who looks better on paper. I felt the air leave the room. The judge folded the letter and set it down slowly. She looked straight at Marcus. "Thank you for your honesty, even if it was unintended," she said. "I think we've seen enough." Bradley Vicks tried to recover, but it was too late. The tone of the room had changed. Marcus shifted in his seat, jaw tight. For the first time, he looked unsure. The judge dismissed us for a recess. Carla leaned in and whispered, "That letter just changed the entire case." I turned around and looked at Ethan. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud. He just looked steady. I mouthed, "Thank you," and he nodded once, like he understood exactly what had just happened. When the judge returned, her ruling was short. Custody would remain joint, but Ethan's primary residence would stay with me. Marcus's visitation was restricted to supervised weekends until further review. The court cited emotional manipulation and a lack of good faith in his filing as reasons for the decision. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just breathed. As we left the courtroom, Ethan took my hand and said, "I didn't mean to get him in trouble. I just didn't want them to forget what kind of mom you are." I knelt down and held him tight. "They didn't forget," I said. "You reminded them." The day after the ruling, I woke up before the alarm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel panic settle in my chest the moment my eyes opened. The sky outside was pale blue, and the apartment was quiet. Ethan was still asleep in his room, curled up with his stuffed bear. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching him breathe. There was no court date looming, no cross-examination waiting to tear my life apart. We had made it through. When I walked into the kitchen, the letter was still there, sitting in my bag like a relic. I read it again. Not because I needed to see Marcus's words, but because I wanted to remind myself how close I had come to losing what mattered most. That letter didn't just save me in court. It stripped away the mask Marcus had carefully built. The performance, the suit, the lawyer, the charm, all of it meant nothing once the truth came out. The part that stays with me most isn't the judge's ruling. It's Ethan. He didn't make a speech. He didn't cry or point fingers. He simply stood up and told the truth. That's what changed everything. Later that week, we walked home from school together. He kicked a pebble down the sidewalk and asked if things were over now. "Almost," I said. "We're not done forever, but we're in a better place now." He nodded. "Can I stay here for Christmas?" "You're always staying here, baby," I said. "This is home." That night, I cooked dinner while Ethan did his math homework at the table. Music played from my phone. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary life. I watched him laugh at one of his own jokes and saw a lightness in his face I hadn't seen in weeks. That's when I knew we were healing. I thought back to all the nights I doubted myself, the times I cried into a towel so Ethan wouldn't hear, the grocery trips where I counted every item twice, the sick days I couldn't afford to take. I had spent so much time feeling like I wasn't enough. But every hug Ethan gave, every time he came to me first with a problem, every laugh we shared, those were my quiet victories. The courtroom didn't define me, it revealed me. I learned that love isn't always loud. It's not always clean or easy or impressive from the outside. Sometimes it's just showing up every single day when no one is watching. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay still while someone tries to shake the ground beneath you. Marcus hasn't changed. He still sends emails trying to rewrite the story, trying to reassert control in subtle ways. But now, I don't react. I keep records. I respond only when necessary. I no longer try to defend myself against someone who was never interested in the truth. My energy belongs elsewhere. Ethan is doing well. His teacher says he's more focused. He's made a new friend in class. He started writing again. Not about court, but about science and dinosaurs and stories that don't carry so much weight. That tells me everything I need to know. He feels safe. Sometimes when we're walking or reading, he'll reach for my hand. No words, just that small gesture, as if to say, "I know what you did. I know you fought. I know we're okay now." And we are. This story isn't about winning. It's about protecting. About refusing to disappear when someone tries to erase you. It's about holding your ground, not with anger, but with grace. It's about a child who saw truth for what it was and had the courage to lift it up when it mattered most. I didn't save my son. He saved both of us. If this story meant something to you, if you saw a piece of your own struggle in mine, I hope you take this with you. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Staying kind doesn't mean staying small. And even when you feel invisible, the love you give matters more than you know. To every mother still fighting, still scraping by, still standing tall after being torn down, you are seen. You are not alone. If you found strength in this story, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below. Tell me what part hit you hardest or share your own story if you're ready. And if you want more real stories that speak the truth others try to silence, subscribe to the channel. Your voice, your presence, your support, it matters here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. We're just getting started.